management. So let me move over to the enterprises vis-a-vis the world outside of it, what's brewing there. So the first thing that most of us are observing in the last couple of years or so is the explosion of devices and channels. What used to be just web applications that were hosted by enterprises and the external entities like customers, partners, or virtually any entity outside of the enterprise which is interested in interacting with the enterprise. Now, these entities would go off on a web browser and access these web applications. So the web browser was the only or the primary medium through which interactions used to happen. Now, that situation has changed. You have an explosion of devices and channels today. You have the primary one, which is your mobile, which is pervading all walks of life today. Then you have kiosks. Then you have applications running on your television sets, running on your cars, all of which are vying to interact or engage with an enterprise to take advantage of its information and assets. So the question is, do enterprises now go off and start building applications for these devices and channels like the way they've been doing with web applications? Remember, that's not a very trivial thing to do because each one of these devices and channels have their individual technologies and platforms, toolings, deployment peculiarities, and whatnot. So not a trivial thing for enterprises to engage in. So that's one problem that we are seeing enterprises facing today. The next thing is in the space of applications. You see that there are a lot more applications today that are smaller in nature, very focused in the capabilities that they provide. And the important thing is that they come and go very fast, right? They're very short-lived these days. Now, why is that happening? Now, that's because you have customers' preferences and tastes very rapidly changing in very short time cycles. Now, applications are the primary means by which enterprises engage with customers, and so they have to keep up with this kind of fluctuation and this kind of dynamics in customer tastes and preferences. So, which is why they get to be very focused to provide a great deal of variety, and then they have to come off and go along with the taste changes and preference changes of customers. So the question is, do enterprises go off and start engaging in churning these applications? Is that something that they'd like to spend their money and time on? So that's another thought that has to be pondered over. The other thing in the applications space is that applications are no longer developed only within the enterprise. You now have a very large community of application developers, very smart, creative guys out there who mash up very interesting applications that can exploit your business information and asset and actually bring in business value. So the question is, can an enterprise afford to ignore this community of developers? It can't, because there is the other aspect of innovation that a business is heavily dependent on these days. To keep up with competition, to keep up with competitive pressure, an enterprise has to continuously innovate, and innovation does not fly anymore as within the organization thing. It has to be done in collaboration with external entities as well. And this community of developers that we are talking about have very good potential to bring in rich business innovation into the enterprise. So an enterprise cannot ignore this community. They need to do something so that this community of developers can have easy and simple access to enterprise information and resources. So that's the other thing that enterprises have to worry about. Then you have the question of partnership. It's not something new to us. Partnerships and the integration problems that they bring in have always been there. But the times that we are in today, we don't have the kind of large lead times for enterprise integration as we used to do in the past. You are very much in an era where partnerships have to get off very quickly and easily also. So enterprises have to show a bit of agility in the external face that they provide, in the way they are receptive to partnerships. So that's another thing, right, in what the enterprise has to deal with when it's looking at partnering with external entities. How quick can the integration come off? Then finally comes brand loyalty. So we are talking about an enterprise's interaction with external entities. So we all know brand loyalty is something to do with how an organization very effectively and actively engages with outside people, how it's able to penetrate its brand through various channels, far and wide. So if an enterprise is going to ignore all of these changes that we are talking about that is happening in the spheres of devices and channels, in the sphere of application, in the sphere of application developers, a business stands to lose because the brand loyalty is something that's going to fade out very quickly because it's just going to lose connect with the external world. So if you look at the problems that we've talked about in this chart, they are all about effective externalization of an enterprise. So how does an organization, by keeping its operational costs low, by continuing to be agile, by continuing to be effective, how can it go and externalize itself, externalize its assets, services effectively? The solution is APIs. So APIs are the mechanism by which an organization can externalize itself effectively, keeping the operational costs in control, can pervade into different devices and channels, and very importantly, you can take advantage of the large community of application developers who are very pivotal in this ecosystem. So by APIs, what we mean is how you expose your organization's assets, services, products as simple resources and a finite set of operations that can be performed on these resources. Very importantly, you shouldn't be huddling a whole bunch of semantics into APIs, which gets very difficult for people to consume it. So the fundamental thing with APIs is the simplicity. Now, why should it be simple? Because we are heavily dependent on this external bunch of application developers who have the potential to take your business to new frontiers by their innovative mashups and applications that exploit your APIs. So APIs typically are resource-centric, and they define a bunch of operations around these resources. So much so when consumers look at your APIs that you've defined across your resources and resource types, they observe an obvious pattern that exists out there, and they grab the tact of dealing with the APIs that you've exposed. So it has to be that way. And if you look at technologies that support this today, the obvious thing that comes to mind is REST. So REST is the popular model that is used for exposing your enterprise assets, services, and information as APIs to the external world. The external world is something that's outside of the enterprise, and so this interaction over APIs happens to be riding on HTTP, and hence the naming called Web API. So the key things here that you have to notice is that APIs are exploited by application developers who embed applications in a myriad of devices which are used by consumers to engage with your enterprise, right? The important thing here is the APIs need to be simple and consumable because they need to be attractive for the application developers to adopt and use in their applications. The other key point is scalability, obviously, because today we are talking about applications that are going to be developed outside of the enterprise, and you need to base up for a lot of scale because your APIs are going to be used in contexts and applications that you haven't foreseen up to now. So you need to base up for scaling a great deal. So we've looked at factors that are leading